Happy Saturday, everybody. Brian Neubert here from GoldandBlack.com. With what we normally call our GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast. This week it is a GoldandBlack.com Saturday Solocast. See what I did there? Because what I've done is I've given our football guys, Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison, the weekend off in order for them to be able to spend some more time figuring out who's on Purdue's football team. So this is going to be a basketball only Saturday simulcast this weekend with just me. Next week, our normal host, Alan Karpik, will be back. We promise. Unfortunately, the elderly man he pushed down the stairs died. So, as we've always told Alan, and it comes to his nefarious affairs, it is all fun and games until somebody catches a manslaughter charge. And Alan just has a couple more witnesses he needs to get to deal with before he comes back. And he will be here next week to resume his duties as moderator of our GoldandBlack.com Saturday simulcasts. In the meantime, it is just me. And I'm just going to talk about Purdue basketball for 15, 20 minutes, however long I can extend this. So obviously Purdue's in the middle of football training camp. Tom and Dub have done a good job covering that on our site. I'd encourage all of you to check out their coverage. They will be back next week to get you up to speed on what you might have missed. But in the meantime, it's me to talk about the end of Purdue's summer basketball practices. I've put some stuff on our website, GoldandBlack.com. I would urge you to go read that stuff. It is very insightful. I treat this like an academic endeavor as much as I do a journalism beat. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's already been written on our site that is going to kind of craft the storylines of this season, and I would encourage you all to go check that stuff out. I can link in the comments here to some of those stories. I'll probably forget, but that's my intention anyway. So thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support. As always, we appreciate it very much. It'll be a very busy weekend here at the Purdue Club Hotel. Pretty soon, students are moving in here next weekend, I believe, if they're taking part in the orientation programs that precede the fall semester, football season starting up. So if you haven't made your reservations at the Purdue Club Hotel, please do so now, or at least get the ball rolling. All right, Purdue basketball. Perhaps you've heard they have a very good team on paper preparing to start formal practice on September 24th, I believe. Summer practice concluded earlier this past week, and the players are off now for a couple weeks. Omar Mayer and Oscar Clough, the two international newcomers, are here at Purdue. They get their total 8 weeks of workouts, so since they missed time with their visa processes, they are staying on campus. It's not realistic, obviously, to go home and come back, obviously. Anyway, so they are here. They're going to get 2 weeks of solid work with the coaches, whether that's skill development, whether that's walking through the offense, whether that's just film study, weight room stuff, the whole enchilada, so to speak, for lack of a better term. I'm just going to run through some impressions from the summer and some thoughts moving forward into the fall. So I probably attended 6 practices, if I had to guess off the top of my head. Probably a half dozen or so, 6 or a half dozen, however you want to term it. And I see a team that, top to bottom, is really good. I think I've been doing this long enough to know what a great team looks like. And I saw one 2 years ago, and I think I saw one again this summer. I just see a team 1 through 10. And mind you, Raleigh Burgess, the sophomore forward, Liam Murphy, the senior forward, were basically out all summer. Liam Murphy practiced. He just didn't do a lot of any full contact live stuff, as they call it, because he had shoulder surgery coming from North Florida. So they held him out. Raleigh Burgess just missed the whole summer after having surgery in his leg. So those two guys, I can't really comment much on, but 1 through 10, everybody else. I don't see anybody where you sit there and look at them like, okay, this guy's treading water. This guy took a step back. This guy's going to get passed over. I don't see where this guy fits in, stuff like that. I don't really see any of that. I see 10 guys. I'm pulling the number 10 out. I haven't actually counted them on paper. I could have written that down along with my rough outline, which is not even, this is how cavemen spoke to one another. This is how they passed down their histories to one another. If you're listening in podcast form, I'm flashing video of completely illegible notes. But I see a really deep team, a team where everybody's been good. Everybody's either improved or lived up to what you expect them to look like. And, Purdue's had a couple of these teams here the last couple of years where you look at them on paper and it looks like they have too many players. And, somebody's going to get cannibalized in it all. And I'm not saying that can't happen. But what I'm saying is I don't see anybody that should have a siren over their head where it says, this guy's an odd man out, or this guy can't help them right now, because it is 10 guys who all look like they can play for a really good team right now and help that really good team win games. They won't all get the same opportunity. This is that classic year, as Purdue's had a couple of these teams where, winning has to be the most important thing for these guys. Sacrifice is going to come up a lot this year. You've seen a lot of players on this team before really sacrifice. Trey Kaufman-Renn has had to wait his turn to a certain extent. That counts as sacrifice. Fletcher Lawyer could be averaging 25% more points, getting 50% more shots, at a lot of other places. That is sacrifice. That has been one of the hallmarks of Purdue's program here since they've been elite. Not just good, but elite. This run of like 5 years or whatever, where they've been a number one seed contender, a number one ranked team, as often as not. And this is certainly going to be one of these years. Purdue might be preseason number one. I can't credibly speak to the rest of the country the way I can to Purdue, nor can anyone, because all of these teams out there are breaking in new players. They're breaking in new transfers. In some cases, they're breaking in entirely new teams. But I think Purdue is the most known, or at least the least unknown team of all of the teams that are going to top a lot of these rankings that are coming out in the preseason. And for good reason. You've got the best three-man core in the country, in my opinion, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Renn. You've got the best senior class in college basketball with those three guys, in addition to Oscar Clough coming in, Liam Murphy coming in as well, to the extent in which he'll be in position to affect winning and losing for Purdue in what will likely be a lesser role than he's been accustomed to. But you never know. You just never know. Best three-man trio in the country, best senior class in the country. That's a pretty damn good start. The continuity of all of this in terms of the amount of basketball these guys have played together is just off the charts. And that is a huge advantage for Purdue. It's been an advantage with some of these great teams before. It'll be a huge advantage this year. There won't be as much of a lead-in, a runway into total cohesion for this team, because Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer essentially share a brain. Trey Kaufman-Renn has had a whole year now as Purdue's go-to guy. He has gotten behind him a million reps with Braden Smith in ball screen offense. He's played with Fletcher Lawyer his whole career. He's played with these guys. This is as continuous a roster, as experienced a roster, as established a roster as there is in college basketball. And that is a great place to start. So when I say Purdue is the most known commodity probably in college basketball, that's what I'm getting at. I think you can reasonably predict what to expect from Purdue this season. Whereas everybody else, there's going to be inevitable variance, because these guys are really, really just met one another at a lot of other places here like 2 months ago, if that. So that's going to be a huge advantage for Purdue this season. I think so much of what makes Purdue great and what makes Purdue better, and for lack of a better term, fixed from last season, is simply size. I think that goes without saying. I'd like anybody who watched the games last year with a discerning eye can tell you Purdue was prohibitively small and now they are abundantly big, so to speak. And all of the limitations that Purdue had to overcome last year because it was so uncharacteristically small now can flip 180 degrees. I almost said 360 degrees and I caught myself. But the limitations from last season now turn into riches this season, and I think it changes everything. I think basketball is, I say this all the time about football, everything is connected. Offense leads to defense, defense leads to offense, size leads to so much more than I think people realize. I think because of Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson coming back from his injury last season, I think Purdue goes from a deficient defensive rebounding team to at least an above average, if not a very, very good defensive rebounding team. And if you just solve that piece of the puzzle last year, Purdue wins the Big Ten probably. Purdue wins a lot more games, and they won a hell of a lot of games anyway. But I guess the one quote-unquote failure I would kind of look at Purdue having experienced last season in terms of something that can turn around is just the conference race. You know, Purdue finishing a few games back of the Big Ten title when they were the preseason favorite. They had the Big Ten Player of the Year. They had 2 All-Americans, and they didn't win the Big Ten. And really, they didn't even come close. They had a couple of games there at the end of the year that kind of went sideways on them. And, you know, a few of those games, if you just get a couple more rebounds, if you just get a couple more easy baskets, if you just turn away a few more easy baskets, those games could have gone a lot of different ways. And I think that, you know, size is going to make Purdue a really good defensive rebounding team. Moving Trakoff Moren to the 4, there's going to be some things to iron out about that, but Purdue prepared for that to play that way last year. And I think Trakoff Moren's a pretty adaptable, pretty malleable type of player. I don't mean that like he can change shape, like you can bend him and change his configuration. I mean he can adapt to a lot of different things, play alongside a lot of different players and still thrive. So I think that the defensive rebounding piece of it means Purdue no longer has to sell itself out on the defensive glass just to survive. I think it gets them more transition opportunities on offense, where having the best point guard in the country is certainly helpful. Having great three-point shooters all over the place is certainly helpful. In my opinion, this is going to sound funny, but bear with me here because I have kept this take in the oven for a very long time, and I think it's about done by now. I think that not having that supreme above the rim athleticism that Miles Colvin and Camden Heide took with them to Wake Forest and Texas respectively, I think that cuts about 10 turnovers off Braden Smith's total this year, which is a net gain for Purdue because I think his inclination to make the high degree of difficulty highlight pass probably takes a little bit of a step backward this year, and I think that can help Purdue in a roundabout way. Simplicity is going to matter. When you're as good an offensive team as Purdue is, simplicity matters. Making the most of every single opportunity matters. And I just remember against Houston in Indy last year that when it was every possession really mattered. I remember there were some runouts where, at least one runout where he threw the ball ahead and threw it out of bounds, and it was a turnover in a game where every possession really mattered. And he was trying to make a really, really eye-opening play as opposed to kind of the simple play. That's the stuff you live with when you have a great player like Braden Smith. It's sometimes you got to ride the lightning, but I think not having those above the rim guys anymore or at all, because I'm not sure Purdue's got anybody who can do that kind of thing on this roster, maybe impacts his judgment for the better to a certain extent, and his judgment's good. This is not a deficiency. I'm just saying that this is kind of a very, very modest dynamic that could actually help Purdue with its ball security needs, which are urgent. That Purdue's got to take care of the ball. But the defensive rebounding piece of it, I think, gets Purdue more transition opportunities. And anything you get easy is a really big deal when you're this good offensively. You don't have to work quite as hard for everything, things like that. I think the foul column now I thought Purdue got a terrible whistle all year long last year. I know how that sounds when somebody like me says that, but I thought it was genuinely true. And if you go back and look at a lot of the fouls that got called on Trey Kaufman-Renn that really hurt Purdue when he had to come out of the game, a lot of them were just him wrestling with bigger people. And now that's what Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson are for. And I think Purdue now goes from worrying about debilitating foul trouble to now getting back into that position where you should be in that plus column, in the foul column. I used the word column too many times in that sentence. And that gets you to free throws eventually. It's the Saturday effect. It's that battle of attrition where, you are pinning a lot of fouls on people. I'm not saying necessarily Purdue's going to pin as many fouls on people as they did with Saturday, but I think they're going to be in the black in that category. Whereas last year they were constantly fighting to stay out of the red. I got that right? Black is good, red is bad. Got you. So I think that a lot of that hidden productivity, starts to turn back in Purdue's favor. You look at the game that I thought really, turned Purdue's season, the end of the regular season, in a bad direction was that game at Michigan. And you just look at how much the whistle mattered and how many of those fouls were just Purdue wrestling bigger guys, trying to survive. And you lost that game because Trey Kaufman-Renn was in foul trouble. There were other reasons, obviously, but that was the biggest one. If Trey Kaufman-Renn stays in that game for a normal portion of minutes, Purdue probably wins that game. Instead, they end up with Trey Kaufman-Renn and Caleb First fouled out at the end, and that's kind of when things totally swung in Michigan's favor and really kind of took Purdue out of the Big Ten race right there. So I think that's another part where size really makes a difference. Defensively, Purdue had no rim protection last season whatsoever, and I think that if Purdue can just be big and obstructive enough, I've never used that word before in my life, but I like it, so we're going to go with that. If Purdue can be just disruptive and obstructive, which rhymes, enough at the rim to take opponents from, let's just make up numbers here, 65% at the basket to 58%. Think of how many points that is per game. That's a half dozen points a game. And when you look at close games, every single one of them matters. That makes no sense, but go with it. Purdue is just obviously has to keep the ball away from the rim first and foremost, but when it can't do that, it just has to be a little bit more present. And I don't think Purdue had anything resembling rim protection last year. They had to protect the rim by keeping the ball away from the rim, and that puts a lot of pressure on those guards to do what they're supposed to do. And that puts a lot of pressure on a lot of people who might not be physically ideally suited to keep the basketball in front of them. And I think it all changes now. I don't think Purdue's going to be a great defensive team, but they are going to be a great offensive team. They might be the best offensive team in college basketball when you take into account their skill, their balance, their experience, and on down the line. And I think offensive rebounding is another thing that comes with size. Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson are really going to help you get extra opportunities, and for a really good, really efficient offense with game-wrecking potential from a three-point shooting perspective and potentially the accumulation of fouls in your favor. Here, I think it's just a really big deal for the defensive rebounding piece of it and the blocking a shot or two a month now as opposed to blocking 10 shots all year last year like Purdue did. I think that is going to lead to a lot of offensive opportunities, and Purdue is going to be really efficient on every opportunity it gets, which brings us to the questions. Purdue's got to take care of the ball. It has to take nothing for granted. It can't get sassy. It can't play for highlights. Things like that. It needs to max out its possessions. Purdue is going to be an elite offensive team if it's just good enough defensively It can do whatever it wants this year from a team outcomes perspective. So it's just taking care of the ball and not giving opponents easy opportunity. This is all 101 stuff. This is all stuff that is true every year for Purdue because they've been one of the best offensive programs in the country and just, at least lately, have just kind of had to be good enough defensively. And the goal is to make everybody work for what they get defensively. That means force lower percentage shots, don't give up layups and dunks, and hold them to one opportunity. The defensive rebounding piece should turn that last piece of it around in a pretty meaningful way. So I just think Purdue's all set up here. I think this is going to be a great shooting team. I think you've got the best guard in the country. I think you've got the best interior scorer in the country. I think you've got offensive rebounding, you've got defensive rebounding, you've got some measure of rim protection. You're going to be a deadly transition team. There is some inexperience coming in. Jack Benner is going to play a role for this team as a redshirt freshman. Omar Mayer is going to play a major role for this team as a true freshman, albeit a professional basketball player. Oscar Clough is going to play a huge role for this team this year. He is a senior. He is an adult. He is a grown man. He's in a different situation, playing in very different environments. But his effectiveness is based on simplicity. I think you can say this about him and Daniel Jacobson both. If you just make 65% of your open layups and dunks, you don't do anything outside your comfort zone necessarily, and you just do what you're there to do, rebound and protect the rim, those guys are good. So it's not all that complicated for them. But Omar Mayer is going to have to fit in next to some higher gravity players in terms of playing with Braden Smith, playing with Fletcher Lawyer, feeding the post probably more than he's probably had to do before. He can be everything I've gathered and seen on video and things like that. He can be a star. He should be a star at Purdue. That could be right now. It could be a deal where he comes in and he does for them like what Carson Edwards did as a freshman, where he really took a good team to another level just with that dynamic element and that complementary element to some other guys who were already really good and really good together. So Omar Mayer can play a variety of different, very effective roles for Purdue right away. He's got to learn. You got to bear in mind that he's new to American basketball. I don't know how different it is, but I'm sure it is. I'm sure Big Ten basketball is kind of different from European basketball. So he's going to have to acclimate, to playing with new guys. Maybe not necessarily being the best player on his team right away. Bear in mind, the professional team he played on, he was the kid. He was not the best player on his professional team, nor should he be. He was playing with adults as an 18-year-old. So he is already conditioned, for some of these undercurrents that are going to define his transition into college basketball here. But he can be really, really good. He's on NBA draft boards already. It's not outside the realm of possibility. This guy has a sort of freshman year that he never sees a sophomore year at Purdue. You're getting ahead of yourself there by even bringing that up, but that's what we do here in the media. We get ahead of ourselves. We get ahead of the story. We get ahead of whatever. So if Purdue gets him back for his sophomore year and he takes the reins from Braden Smith, you're talking about a guy who, again, we haven't seen him play a game yet, so I'm way out over my skis on this, but if he's back for his sophomore year, sliding into Braden Smith's usage, this is the breakout player in all of college basketball as a sophomore. But that's 15 months away, however long it is from now. Right now, Omar Mayer has to fit in before he stands out. And fitting in and playing a role on a really, really good team is hard for a lot of guys. I don't expect it hard for him. He knew what he was getting into when he committed to Purdue. He knew Braden Smith was back here. He knew that Purdue was going to have a ton of seniors. So this is what he decided to do. So I'm sure his mind is in the right place in terms of just wanting to win and just wanting to do what he can do to help Purdue win at a really high level. And I think Oscar Clough is obviously the same way. I mean, he's not coming to Purdue to be their best player. He's coming to Purdue to win and play at a really high level and he's going to have the opportunity, obviously, to do that. And Purdue's got every piece I think you could possibly want. I think a point to make too about Omar Mayer is he could be a star right away for all we know. But I think some perspective is appropriate in terms of how much Purdue needs him to be one of their best guys. People are going to debate the starting lineup all they want. The reality is it really doesn't matter all that much. It's okay to bring really good players off your bench. I'm not saying this is how it's going to play out, but I think people are forgetting about how important C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris are from a defensive perspective, guarding the ball and making sure Braden Smith doesn't have to empty his tank doing that. So I'd be very surprised if either C.J. Cox or Jakari Harris aren't on the floor one or the other aren't on the floor most of the time. Omar Mayer fits in behind Braden Smith very easily, behind Fletcher Lawyer very easily, and in that timeshare with those three guys. I'm just speculating here. I have no idea what they have in mind here. But regardless of where he plays or how much he plays or whether he starts or not, Omar Mayer is going to have a chance to be one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten, and certainly an impact player and a guy who can take a great team, maybe to a slightly even higher level. Having that secondary ball handler for Purdue is just going to be enormous too. Having somebody who can give you the opportunity every now and then to take Braden Smith out of the game. I don't know if they necessarily had that benefit or that luxury last year. If they did, you didn't see it very often. What you did see is Purdue scheming to try to take some burden off Braden Smith, to try to maybe not limit his minutes as much as the tread on his tires. You saw them obviously put Cox and Harris on the ball so that they didn't have to, so Smith didn't have to do it. You saw Smith kind of roam a little bit on defense, kind of do what he wanted and not have to exert himself all that much sometimes. You saw at times Purdue moved him off the ball to start possessions so they could use him as somebody who could use some off-ball screening to get the ball back and get in scoring positions, things like that. Jakari Harris and C.J. Cox could bring the ball up, but they weren't those true playmakers that could do the same stuff Braden Smith did. So they gave him half the position, kind of starting off on the wing, and then they kind of worked the ball back to him more often than not. So I would imagine Purdue will do much the same this year to try to keep Braden Smith from having to play 39 minutes of insane usage every single game, and he'll be better off for it. His average possession should be a higher quality possession this year than it was last year, and he was the Big Ten Player of the Year last year, a first-team All-American last year, even with a cumbersome, is that the right word? A cumbersome minutes load to bear. So I just think Purdue's got everything right now. I mean, I don't think there's really anything other than really high-end athleticism, and I'm not really sure what good that did Purdue last year, and I'm not really sure how much that matters when it would be dwarfed by experience and skill anyway. But I think Purdue's kind of got it all here this year. I don't think people will ask, is this team better than the Zach Edey senior year team? That I don't know. I think this team is a little bit more dynamic on the perimeter. I think that team just had a weapon of mass destruction in Zach Edey that just could not be prepared for. And I just think that the toll he took on everyone, every single game, is just something this team may not necessarily have. Very few teams do. So if Purdue runs into a Zach Edey in the NCAA tournament this year, that's something they're going to have to deal with. But the good news is there are no Zach Edeys in college basketball. There may never be again, for all we know. So I just think Purdue's as well set up as you could possibly be going into a season where the expectations will be sky high, and for good reason, because I think anything's on the table this year for what Purdue's capable of. It just has to have that same approach that the Final Four team did, where they were professional about everything. They never took games off. They never phoned any in. And I think I always put it this way: Purdue's standard needs to be the best Purdue can be. And if Purdue does that every single game, they're going to win every single game. And that would probably be a mouthful if I'm talking about a national title game. But I do think this team, is the clear Big Ten frontrunner. I say that not knowing what Michigan's going to look like. because I don't know their players. Um, I don't know the national landscape very well. It is hard to go to the Final Four. No matter how good you are on paper, it is really hard to go to the Final Four. So expecting that sort of accomplishment is really ambitious. Predicting it, bragging about it in advance of a season is really ambitious. So it is really difficult to do. And what that team did a couple years ago in terms of its relentlessness and its will and its professionalism, its consistency was really something to not marvel at. That sounds a little bit flowery, but it was really impressive. We'll put it that way, and really uncommon. So that's kind of what I got. That's basically the summer and the season to come, all in a nutshell here on August 9th. So we've got it all figured out. I can take the season off. You can stop paying attention now. We've answered every question you can have. So that is our GoldandBlack.com Saturday Solocast for this week. Simulcast. I'm joking about the Solocast part of it. I just think it has a nice ring to it. Thank you to the Premium Club Hotel for your support. As always, we appreciate it very much. Try to stay busy the next couple weeks, guys. Try to keep all your employees occupied while move-in weekend occurs, football season starts, on down the line. Just try to stay busy. Need to ask a favor. If you're listening to this in podcast form, I need to ask you to please leave a 5-star review and a pleasant comment, a productive comment, a PG-rated comment, preferably. We would really appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. People like to say smash the like button. That's a little bit violent for my taste. But I also work for Alan Karpik, so all of his demons have sort of kind of bled into my being as well. So that's what I got. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you for listening. And we will be back next week with your GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast. So thanks, everybody.